Where is insurtech headed next? This is where indie agents own the answer. Welcome to the Vertafore Insurance Podcast. Let's go. Welcome back to the Vertafore Insurance Podcast, where we talk all things insurtech and the future of the indie agent channel. Today, I have some very special guests, not one, but three people joining us to have a pretty exciting conversation about how would I put this? The reimagination of Vertafore through platforming, creating a new foundation, modernizing Vertafore's technology, and who we're doing it with and why we chose that partnership. So with that, let me do some quick intros before we get into the meat of things here. We have the one and only Jace Hopper, who is our VP of Product Management and really heads strategy around our large agents and brokers. Jace, welcome. How you doing, man?
Sid, thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun being here.
Awesome. Awesome. August Butterbrat is joining us today as well. He is the Director of Product Management, heads up Risk Match and RefCon, two of our more popular solutions, as well as really brainstorming around the strategy of data management and centralization here at Vertafore. August, how you doing?
Good, Sid. Good to talk to you.
Awesome. And we have Ralph Severini here as well. Ralph is the global leader for insurance alliances at AWS. And I am not going to do his story justice. I promise you I'm a rookie here when it comes to the technology. So Ralph, if you could give us a little bit on your background and who you are and what you do over at Amazon.
Yeah, Sydney, great to be here and great to share the mic with you, so to speak, at this point in time. And great to be partners with Vertafore. So a lot of greats here to begin with. I'm glad to be here. Yeah, so my quick background is, and I have probably more gray hair than most of you on the other end of the line here. So I've been with AWS 3.5 long years, but well over 3 decades in the financial services and technology industry, and been on both sides, both on the pure tech and on the insurance side. I've been a broker, underwriter, started at the low end of the ladder and probably ended at the very highest end of the commercial ladder. So, just really a hybrid kind of person. I love the industry and really would like to see us advance into the next decade and what we can do best together. So that's a little bit about me, Sydney.
Wonderful. I appreciate that. August, maybe you could give us a deep dive around just how you came to Vertafore and what piqued your curiosity in data, because when I think about the data guy at Vertafore, your name is synonymous.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I came to Vertafore about 2 years ago. I spent almost 10 years in telecommunications, worked for a very large TV content provider, and I held a lot of different roles. I started out in IT, handling a lot of the data infrastructure and tech stacks for different lines of business, and then I actually went over to marketing and managed all of their MarTech stack, and a lot of it had to do with how we handled data to target and acquire new prospective clients. And then I ended my tenure there managing a number of different operational type roles and data reporting teams on how we're performing in the field, as well as sell through on very specific products. And so I came to Vertafore on this journey mainly because I wanted to get more dedicated into products and data. I had actually applied for 2 roles at Vertafore, and I chose this one because it was centered around data to begin with, because I think forging ahead and building new capabilities all starts with the data itself. So
agreed. Yeah, and I think it's safe to say there's a lot of opportunity around data at Vertafore. So Jace, tell me a little bit about your background and why you chose to come and lead the strategy for our large brokers and agencies. That's a complex strategy. A lot of them are going through a big change right now, and so you've kind of got this balance between guiding the technical conversation, but building those relationships. Why here? Why Vertafore?
It's a great question. I actually don't have an insurance background. I actually come from the advertising and marketing technology ecosystem, sort of back pre-Facebook IPO, Twitter IPO. We helped, make a lot of those companies figure out how to monetize their data through measurement campaigns and things like that. So I spent quite a bit of my career in the advertising and marketing ecosystem. Common theme here, big data, right? I manage one of the largest third-party data ecosystems out there in the market. Worked closely with some other folks here on the call in a prior life as well. Really enjoyed that space and really found that fascinating. I made a pivot to Vertafore about 2 years ago because of the opportunity here. I saw a lot of commonality to sort of where things were in the advertising and ad tech ecosystem about 12, 15 years ago. And the need to sort of consolidate, change, disrupt, provide transformation. And as a product leader, it's like a dream come true to be able to do that. And so to be able to apply a lot of the thinking that existed over in that high tech, very fast moving space to insurance was a really cool opportunity. The second big reason was just the connectivity to the users here. I've never seen it in my career in product, how engaged and involved the users are for these products and insurance. It's like a giant family and I love it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a big believer in, problem-driven development. And so being able to have those conversations and be very upfront with customers about things is just, it really is a dream come true. So that's really the big shift for me.
See, now you didn't tell me that you had a marketing background.
Sure do.
I'm just finding this out. The PowerPoints make so much more sense now.
Yeah, I just won't tell you about some of the stuff that I've built that you're probably using today. So
that's awesome. Dude, that's awesome. Definitely want to grab a cup of coffee on that at some point.
We'll go deep on that one day.
Yeah, heck yeah. All right, Jason, I'm going to start with you here. Vertafore is making this is a big move to transform or modernize the tech foundation that we have. And I think it's important to be honest and realistic and, look in the mirror and say, well, if we're modernizing, that means we're coming from somewhere. And that from somewhere has some challenges. Namely, we have tech debt, which I think, if you were to take a microscopic view of Vertafore and say, oh, we're in 2023 and things just aren't moving fast enough, or the tech isn't exactly where I want it to be, or it doesn't look exactly how I want it to look. I know that sometimes it's easy to see the flaws in things, right? I think it's important to step back and say, well, there's a lot. First of all, it's very difficult to build a lot of the technology that we have. We've seen a lot of startups try. There's a lot of complexity to it and years and years and years of maturity that you just can't skip because you believe and you care and you're passionate. Now, with that maturity comes the complexity and the tech debt. And so we've got this moment in time or this opportunity where we've had to say, all right, now we've got to leap forward instead of step forward, and that's really this modernization. And the term I've heard used thrown around is platforming, and I don't know if that's the right term here, because you're the guy. I'm just the messenger. But is that the right term? How would you describe this modernization and what it really means, and what the journey is going to be like for Vertafore?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's important to kind of look at some of how I kind of talked a little bit about Vertafore and sort of how it came to be, right? And you look at sort of Vertafore being built. I mean, we've acquired countless number of companies over the years, and as through that, right, really focused in on continuing to develop the products themselves, sort of very much from we're going to develop what we need to do in a powerful roadmap around this product, and we've been very successful there. What we're seeing in the industry, and I think this is part of the course, is that especially with this platformizing that you're calling it, or platforming that you're calling it, I mean, really thinking true SaaS, right? And how do you move to a more SaaS-like ecosystem, which allows you to really the products are just the functions at the end of the day, and they're providing you a service to really manage throughout your workflow, right? And your life cycle that you need those products for, right? From an insurance perspective, right? The lead to a policy being quoted, generating that policy, getting it bound by the carriers, submitting it off to quote for carriers, come back, and all that through Vertafore happens through many different products today. And so when we look at some of the, you call it tech debt, I look at it as opportunity, to be honest, to really think about creating a foundation that we can build upon, right? And so that's really what we're doing, right? We're really focusing in on how do we create a foundation of commonality, of common things that we can build upon so that we can really move faster, more efficient, and really create more powerful use cases that we couldn't even dream of before in a sort of siloed environment. And so that's really the effort we're going down on it. And that platformizing that you talked about, it's funny, I don't know if I've ever heard that term, but the SaaS flip over that we're doing really is focusing on creating those foundations. There's many layers of platforming that you can do, all the way down to the infrastructure, to sort of the data, which I'm sure August will get into a little bit here, to the UI that the users interact with, right? All that, there's multiple layers of a platform that we're focusing on. And so that's really what we're all about right now.
Ralph, do you think the term platform is accurate, or as you see a lot of companies go through this, right? Come to Amazon and say, all right, we want to modernize. What are the right terms here?
Well, certainly we've heard the word platform used by so many different companies, including our own, and before I ever came to AWS. Yeah, I think it can be used and expressed in different ways, but it's certainly an option and a way to build into a SaaS orientation if you weren't SaaS to begin with. And pretty much, most companies are going to move to that and have been moving the past several years. So you can platform your architecture, and sitting on top of that platform, you can take the components that you built. And I see this with a variety of what I would call companies who have that tech debt, can't just strip out everything and start from ground zero. I think, August, you were talking about you working in the telco industry, so, and there's technical debt out there, and I reflect back on when I knew something in the industry before I got a lobotomy, on the business side, so to speak. I was working for AT&T Bell Laboratories. So, and I worked for Kent under the same area that Ken Thompson and Dennis Ritchie. Now I'm really putting some gray hair on, but they invented Unix and C and C++. So and there was like 4,000 PhDs, and we thought we were so far ahead of the curve. And then I left and I joined Sun Microsystems, who invented Java. And I look back in the 90s on those two elements, and I'm thinking, well, how do people build off of that, which was the most modern networking approach to things, and to re-platform what we're trying to do today with all the services and cloud native approaches that, say, in AWS and our competitors are approaching on. I think it's a challenge, and it's probably a lot easier for a cloud native insurtech, or fintech or any kind of tech that's beginning in their industry to run cloud native and say, I'm not burdened with that. But eventually, they're going to run into the same things over time, because we're moving so fast in the world of technology, whether it's, generative AI or whatever, that things have to change. So you have to think about things like platforming and APIs. I think the whole concept of APIs may change over the next 10 years, where integration lies. So I think there's going to be some challenges, and I think you just have to be thinking about it in the most effective way. So I'll stop there, and we could go on, but there's just a lot there that you had brought up.
Yeah, Ralph, you hit on a really good point, which I like, which is, really moving faster, right? And that's really what it's all about, is how do we move faster, right? And you have to build that foundation, right, in order to do that, and really get rid of a lot of that technical debt, as people refer to be able to do that and to keep up, right, with the technology advancements that are happening in these days. it's amazing, right, to see sort of how much has changed and how much continues to evolve. And so how do we do that as a company, and how do we do that just in this ecosystem in general, is a big part of it, and what we're really focusing on. So I like that point around moving faster that you hit on.
Would a good use case for moving faster? I'm thinking about all the people out there who hear this term tech debt, and I have a high level understanding of it just from learning from you guys, but a lot of people don't have access to people like you, right? And so they are hearing you say tech debt probably for the first time. And what I've seen is, okay, we want to change something, or we want to improve something inside of the solution or the product, but when we do that, it's going to affect 30 other things. And some of those things are, we're talking about a jungle of 50 years of development. We may not even be able to get to some of the levels of functionality that it's going to touch when we change this thing. So is that what you mean by tech debt, other than the consolidation piece?
That's a big part of it. And I think, really thinking about sort of a product, right, in a siloed mentality, right? That's why when you kind of bring up the term tech debt, I don't really look at it as debt, right? When it was built at the time, it was the latest and greatest data, set of stuff. Now we're at a point where, things have just continued to move and evolve, and we've, acquired more companies, and we as an organization are really thinking portfolio, right? It's not just about a single product. It's about how that product interacts with all these other products. And as you develop the roadmap and really uncover the technical components of that, right, when you do something over here, it's likely going to impact something over here. And so we ask ourselves those questions constantly and say, how do we get smart about this, right? How do we really think about this in a very thoughtful and pragmatic way so that we can deliver on the most value as quickly as possible? Are we going to eliminate all that tech debt? No, right? It's if someone ever told you that, they're crazy, right?
Okay.
What was tech debt yesterday is not tech debt tomorrow. It changes so fast. So that's the big shift, is really towards that more portfolio thinking, where you start to look at the things that are considered tech debt and ask the question, what do we need to do to standardize this to a common framework so it's that we're always able to keep up with the latest and greatest?
Makes sense. I'm hearing this sort of bifurcation of initiatives as we talk through the modernization. One is more what I would call like the front end, the UI, the UX piece. And then the other part is the data, the belly. And August, I know you're doing so much work around the centralization strategy. Talk to me about what that looks like, and I think really why it's important, because we can get into, I'm sure, essays of really cool, technical diatribes, but why, ultimately, why is it meaningful for the end user?
Well, I think the interesting part is we probably have taken our first steps in a data transformation strategy in parallel with how we're working with AWS. And so if you were to use trying to get to Mordor, we've barely left the Shire right now, right? In terms of what we're doing. But investing time in our data extraction strategy and approach, and I know we'll get into that a little bit later, is going to allow us to get our data into a place where you talk about what Jason is talking about with, that platform strategy, cross-product integration, and being innovative on that front, and not having as much tech debt to keep those things going is going to be huge for us. And so putting the time in now is going to, in complementing the AWS migration, is going to allow us to move faster. And I kind of think about it in terms of we're slowing down a little bit to speed up, because we will actually start to be able to be out in front of some of our client requests, and also be having clients think about the request they're asking and presenting it to them in terms of a new way in which we believe it should be developed. And that helps us a ton to kind of skate to where the puck's going to be a little bit.
Well, I know you and I are going to talk in detail about the data story and how all that's coming to life. So for those of you guys listening to this podcast, stay tuned. There's an even deeper dive that we're going to get into for those of you who are maybe somewhat sadistic around wanting to understand the modernization of technology. I think it's really cool. But for now, let's save that conversation. And Jace, obviously this idea of modernization is really important. We've chosen to move on to the cloud. We've got this data centralization strategy that's coming together. We needed to find a partner in order to make it happen and come to life. Why didn't we just go with, modernizeyourtech.com or platformyourtech.com?
It's a great question. I think you just kind of hit on it a little bit in terms of the partner comment you made, right? We could have chosen any number of vendors, right, to support our infrastructure. There's a dime a dozen out there, right? Name your cloud provider here, right? There's a lot of them. Obviously, they ebb and flow every day, it feels like, and who's available. But really focusing in on the partner aspect of it was a big reason for sort of why we decided to go down the path with Amazon and specifically, AWS. And I emphasize that because, core values here at Vertafore are very much focusing on that partnership mentality, right? We focus in on looking out for the user, thinking about the user, what's best for that end user, how do we solve for meaningful problems, right? Really focusing on that. I know Amazon has a lot of the same behavior and thinking. And so it was a very natural and mutual fit for us in terms of, thinking through collectively in that partnership mindset. How do we solve, not just as a cloud, right? We could have taken our data, our infrastructure really anywhere, right? But it was bigger than that. And thinking about the disruption that we can create in this industry, who's best suited to do that? Who's best suited to do that with us, more specifically? And so that's one of the bigger reasons, right, at the end of the day. And we can go into tons and tons of little detail as to some of the other things, but at a macro level, that was the biggest part of it.
Ralph, I have to be honest, I did not know that Amazon had a cloud-based services arm. That was very new to me, because when I think of Amazon, I think of, I'm going to get the, Raisin Bran or the book that I wanted to read or that weird hat that I really want in like 2.5 hours delivered to my front doorstep in this beautiful box. That's what I think of Amazon as, and learning more about Amazon Web Services and Amazon, it's been interesting. What I want to be careful of here is not to get caught up in the Amazon headline, because I think this industry has had some experiences in the recent past where there's been that headline partnership, and we've been sort of, wooed and charmed into believing that because of that, man, there must be this amazing, outcome and result. And I think, while on the one side, one of the reasons I came to Vertafore is because I felt like the story wasn't being told, and I wanted to get the story of all these different, initiatives that are happening out into the market. I'm also, I respect the company quite a bit for not going out to the headlines and doing press releases about some of this stuff, right? And saying, hey, we're just here to do the work and make the technology better, and that's what we care about at the end of the day. So let's just take the Amazon name off for a sec, take the AWS name off for a sec, reverse the lobotomy, and give me the deep dive on what makes Amazon special in the cloud-based services world.
Yeah, that's a lot to peel back the onion on, Sid. So, but I probably I always think best corporations and businesses, and I before I joined, I spent 8 years with another terrific business with terrific core values. So and if you look at Amazon so AWS was formed 17 years ago in 2006, and it was all an output from Andy Jassy, who wrote something called the PRFAQ. Be glad to explain that. But that's our investment internal process. But it really stemmed from, if you think about it, Amazon's only 12 years older than that. So I don't know, are we middle-aged in the business? I'm not quite certain on how you describe that. But in the last 17 years, look what's happened, and it's like, I don't know the exact numbers, so don't quote me here, but it's like 80,000 employees and 80 billion in run rate in terms of business. So enormous growth. And some people say Amazon Web Services. Oh, so you do web pages for the industry, And I'm saying, yeah, not really, so even my wife didn't know who Amazon Web Services was before. She's a non-techie, so she was asking, so what do you guys really do? Is it but here to me, and I think to a lot of people, it begins with your DNA. And I think Jeff Bezos, not that I know him, well, he's kind of moved on to Blue Origin, his space company, and he's moving into outer space, and we're doing the more mundane things in life. But in any case, obviously a brilliant man, and he founded the company on leadership principles, core values, essentially. And those leadership principles, and I always reflect on 4 or 5, customer obsession, working backwards from the customer. I'm learning those things that he really put forward to the Amazon side of the house. What does that mean for the AWS business customer? And I think culture, DNA, leadership principles, I don't care what company you're in, if they don't match up and they're not significant, and the core leaders of your company aren't working on those, then ultimately, yeah, you could probably have a successful company for a while. But to get to 20, 30 years, you need good leadership. You need really good leadership principles. And I think that's where I'm based on, both for my life and for the business side. And I think AWS does a pretty damn good job of it. I'm not saying other folks, all of us, and I want our partners to leverage off of that, and however we can co-build around some of those principles, I think would benefit us. And then ultimately working backwards from our industry customers, whether it's agents, I've been a broker, an underwriter, all those folks are looking to us to help achieve their goals in life. And hopefully they have similar core values, whether you're at the, call it the All States or, the Nationwide, just Liberty Mutuals, whatever they are. Those core values, and string those together. That's really an important element of building the best business environment in the world.
Yeah, and I do want to add to, when you talk about the core values and going to Jace's partnership, we started this podcast late because I was late, because you have AWS folks on site that are very diligently asking the right questions about our data strategy. And I finally told them, I was like, hey, I have to run, but I will be back. And they have their sleeves rolled up right now in a conference room with us, and they are engaged. And I think that that's the one thing I like from a pure working relationship perspective of where the rubber meets the road. They are helping us lean in to optimize how we're leveraging AWS for our data strategy and overall platform.
Yeah, August, you hit on probably the biggest point that I look at from this partnership over the last 2 years that I've seen is just we're helping figure out and collectively figure out, there's a problem here. This customer's facing this challenge. What can we do collectively to solve it? Right? And I know that Amazon is rolling up their sleeves. AWS specifically is rolling up their sleeves and building things that we can lean on, right, to help transform this industry, or tools that we can leverage to help maximize the value of our own products. So take some of the reporting solutions, right, that we have out there, right? We're not going to rebuild our reporting solutions. We're going to leverage best-of-breed technology, right, powered by QuickSight from Amazon, right, and working closely with them to work through the challenges that exist within that product and what they can do to help make it better. We work very close with the QuickSight product team, as an example. As we see challenges in the market, we're directly connecting with them and saying, hey, we need this, right? This is a feature to create value for our customers. And that's just one small example of so many things that we can start to take advantage of with this partnership. It's not just about the infrastructure, like I mentioned it before, right? There's a ton of technology and capabilities that we can start that exist today, and I'm sure you can speak to it a little bit, but that's a big part of this. And so we're trying to take a macro level look at all those toolkits and say, as we're building out this platform, maybe some of those common things that we build out are powered by the tools that Amazon has already built versus reinventing the wheel, right? And that's a big part of it for us as well.
So I'm
Hey,
here.
could I add something there?
Oh my gosh, yes, of course. Of course.
And so everything that we're talking about leads me, and we use this phrase "think big" a lot as part of our kind of principles, take ownership and stuff. So ultimately, when we get all the the basic blocking and tackling done together, which is going to take a bit, but during that, we should have another swim lane next to that, saying, what can we do together to think big for the agents and brokers and our common customers. Let's not limit ourselves. And I think it's our responsibility again to get into a room, and maybe with some of your our common customers, your customers, and I'm sure you do that anyway. But you also have us to sit in there with you as a co-partner. And I just think we owe it to ourselves and the industry to think larger than ourselves, and that requires commitment, consistency, cooperation, all the things that a good partnership and relationship require. But it also thinking out of the box a little bit, and again, working backwards from needs of the industry, not just tomorrow, but 5 years from now.
Yeah.
And we'd love to do that with you and with our common customers here.
Well, I think it helps that you've got the experience specifically in insurance too. You as a person as well. Like, they've clearly hired intentionally to make sure that they've got experience with not just the web services side of things, but also in different verticals. So that's really exciting and cool. And I think I'm hearing you've got world-class infrastructure, right? So yeah, sure, you could go find web services or cloud-based services from someone else, but go to the best. But that's sort of the baseline, right? And so then what really takes things to the next level and makes this special is the partnership, the business case, your reputation, longevity, the unique experience you have in the insurance industry. But I know there's also a technical side, and Jace mentioned this with the services specifically. I know you had mentioned at one point that you have over 200 services that are available to be used. Could you go into more detail around what some of those services are and even some that are being used in the insurance industry currently?
Oh, there's so many. Great question. And I'm sure you, Jason, August, you're exploring all those. Insurance begins, or I'd say financial services. I spent a little time in capital markets in New York as well, which is super data dependent. I got bored with insurance for a few years. So I went on the cap market side, which they weigh their decisions in nanoseconds. And insurance is kind of the counterpart to that, and they weigh their decisions more from the risk side long term. And I try to reflect on both, and I just see what Goldman Sachs is doing. One of the pure leaders in the global financial industry, and what they're doing with their Goldman Sachs Financial Cloud on AWS, and really monetizing data. So it starts from the crown jewels of the financial services industry. And August, I think you're leading into that, but the data in the industry and across financial services has been siloed for decades. It's still siloed for the most part. How do we open up those silos? And so for AWS, a lot of our initiatives have been around data lakes and something called Redshift. We'll get into that. There's literally hundreds of names here, but where you can mesh data in large amounts from different external and internal systems, whether it's your policy admin system or whether it's maybe you're pulling data in from Verisk or the industry leaders in collecting data. But there's so much more, and being able to slice and dice of that with kind of what we call SageMaker tools, just like it sounds. It's being smart about things, and then being able to use that in terms of what every insurer wants to do, and what every business in financial services, cap markets, banking or otherwise, and that's to predict the future. how fast can you predict the future with the data that you have? And so much of our data, I'm doing a lot of work on cyber insurance right now where there is no past. It's only today and the future. And there's mounds of this dark web data combined with, business data, and it doesn't fit any actuarial models in the past. So, there's no, I can't build on this stuff. I have to think differently. When I was saying think big, that's one area that I think we could allude to. So it's data, prediction. Every insurer wants to be able to get ahead of that curve. And it's not only prediction, I'll put my old underwriting hat on. It's not only that prediction, you want to be able to, price rate, risk properly. You want to eliminate the risks that are bad, and you want to use that data to that effect. And I think, and then the other side of it is use the data to get better insights. So a lot of what we've done on both data and insights we've taken some of the tools at Amazon. So Sid, you've been talking about that. Exactly. What did Amazon bring to the table? Well, they were doing that with the customers, and you brought it up, individual customers and consumers. A lot of those techniques were brought forward into AWS and now applied to our business customers. And I think all of those are the necessary ingredients to go forward in a good business context. Again,
well, I think to take what you just said and put it in the context of Vertafore, we have an extremely talented data science director and team that really works and builds some predictive capabilities, but they're under the risk match data set and products. And when we think about this extraction piece and deploying new features faster, Chad's going to be getting his hands on that data set in AWS across all the different things. And if you think about deploying new features and the velocity that Jace was talking about, those are the features that we're thinking about that he would then get his hands on, his team would get his hands on to bring that forward. So future podcast topics, Sid, is getting Chad on here just to put that plug in and just talk about all the advanced capabilities that we can do that some clients may not be thinking of in general.
Simply put, right, moving it to more of a guide me mentality versus and being able to, help me versus me having to figure it out, right? I think that's a big shift, right, that I think we're starting to see in the industry. I mean, you talk about the risk prediction stuff. I mean, insurance, shifting away from being I have to know what I want versus being more of a risk-centered mentality. No, this is what you need. I mean, here in Colorado, an example, fires that came up, not too long ago, are forcing a lot of customers, myself included, right, to even ask the question, am I insured enough? I shouldn't have to ask that, right? It should be very upfront for me as a customer, right, of somebody. And so I think that's where a lot of the data that we're leveraging, through the powers of what we have with Amazon, what August and team are doing with the data lakes and the data modeling, all that starts to lead towards more of that guide me concept, which is a huge shift, right? But a good one and an important one.
I mean, listen, I've seen refrigerators that can tell you when you're out of milk. So
my favorite example is Google Maps. I get in the car, right, and I don't have to do anything, right? It just tells me it's going to take you 10 minutes to get to this destination. It's guide me, right? It knows me. It's predictive, and that's such an important aspect of especially insurance, right? As we're moving towards more modern technology and really thinking differently.
I was just going to say, I'd love to show, we could probably go down the IoT route as
right.
well for at least an hour. We have the whole division focused on that, but so I was listening to somebody else, a major player in the industry, an executive, talking about IoT 2 weeks ago. And but the numbers are astounding. And I've been working on this internationally a little bit, not as much as I am doing working on the cyber piece, because I think the cloud companies, all of the cloud companies have to operate in a better way in that sense, because there's too many bad actors out there. But on the IoT side, there's about, I think today there's something like 20 IoT devices per person on the planet, which is like 200 billion. Wow. But the expectation is 20 trillion. in a few years. And 20 trillion is 2,000 devices per person.
Wow.
That's 2 orders of magnitude greater than what we have today. So we don't even have so to analyze that instantaneous nanosecond data coming at us, let's say we're using water sensors in your homes, water sensors in commercial buildings, which is the most frequent source of property claims. Just a simple thing like that, and we're going to be collecting mounds of data instantaneously. We'll literally probably need quantum computing in qubits to process this. No one's at that level at this point. By the way, quantum computing, we might be tapping into black holes at some point, because they're the pieces. I mean, talk about the future here, in terms of being able to process mounds of data. And it is partially the data. And can we use that to improve our lives? So again, can it ward off, a water leak in your home when you're off on vacation? You're not there. You can't see it. Or even, we thought we had a water leak in our attic here, and we had to call someone in and say, is it actually leaking from? But wouldn't it be great if if there were sensors up there, because you can't get up there easy. I'm just giving you my example, which happened recently, and I'm going, well, we can't get up there. I can't. I'm not going to crawl through that little hole, and even if you do, you can't eyeball it. So wouldn't it be great to have things like that? The car of the future, there's a bunch of sensors in a car. Wouldn't it be great if an insurance company could say, I know where that accident is at the minute that it occurs, where it occurred, maybe who was in the car, and how much damage occurred on it. And within 24 minutes, not 24 hours, you got a check out to the claimant. I just think there's so much area that we can help our agents and insurers on, that we're just, we're still a few years away, but think about the possibilities here.
Well, and that foundation, right, to create the connectivity, right, is so important, right? As you think about all this crazy complicated world and new devices and the amount of stuff that we're continuing to do, if you don't have that foundation set up to connect all that stuff in a seamless way, you're not ever going to be able to take advantage of it, right? And so that's a big part, just kind of bringing it back to that whole platform concept. That's a big part of it, right? We set ourselves up so that we can think bigger, right? We can think beyond, right? What we can think about today. What is the change that we can create? What are those creative things? I mean, that would be awesome if I get a check for something 24 minutes after I had an accident. That'd be fantastic. But that's the core crux of this whole thing is how do we take advantage of all that technology, right? And move at the same pace and the same speed, or as close as possible to it, as things are continuing to develop and market, and think differently about it and think bigger. So that's a big kind of tying that all back, right? It's kind of see, right, from sort of why this is such a big shift for us and why we're doing it. So.
That was going to be my...
We can imagine the future, but we still have to bring it back to the foundation. So we have to do both, continually imagine, but, build all the fundamentals. Sorry, Sydney.
No, you wrapped that up much better than I did, so I appreciate it. And I guess, just to conclude, to Jason, August, there's a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of hope for, I think about my dad's agency, my brother's taking it over. My brother can't run the same agency my dad's been running. He's got to run a different agency. And today, the biggest opportunity and challenge for him is going to be technology. So where are we at today in terms of getting to this new world? And I guess to tee up here, because I think before I came to Vertafore, I used to be one of those people who said, why can't they just move faster? Why can't they just build this stuff, in like the snap of your fingers? And what I've learned is that there is so much thought, intentionality, road mapping, planning, bringing teams together. How does this affect within, products within Vertafore, outside? I mean, you have to think about so many different things, and then you have to go build it and execute it, and things go wrong because we're only human, and now you're, sort of you're moving forward, but maybe at a slightly different pace. So there's just so much complexity in this world that I don't think people can really understand unless you step into it. So I do just want to say that to those agencies who are listening. But where are we at today in terms of that foundation? When do you think that is going to be at a point where we can start bringing in some of these more creative innovations?
I mean, from my perspective, I mean, it's already here in many cases, right? We've created what I like to use the term the flywheel effect, right? So, you're on a rower, right? It takes that first couple pulls, they're hard, right? As soon as you get that flywheel spinning, it's cranking, right? And you can doesn't require as much to keep that same momentum going. We're there, right? We've made those hard pulls, and now what we're doing is really taking advantage of that flywheel effect now and really bringing together our products in such a way where we can start to think differently, right? And now this is going to be something that evolves over time, but this is not something that is all of a sudden, and on this date, a year from now, this is when it's all going to be. It's here, right? We've already moved many of our products to AWS. We've already incorporated some of the technology that AWS brings to the table, like QuickSight for Benefit Point, right? We're already taking advantage, and August can speak more of this, some of the data stuff. It's here, right? And that's the big thing to keep in mind, is that now we can start to be like, hey, how do we think differently now? And so that's where a lot of our brains, August and I are spending a lot of time in how does this change things, right? Because that flywheel actually we've created, and it's now spinning. So
wonderful, guys! Thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you carving out time to share the story of what's going on. I know that you can start to see it come to life with Jace, your products, with Sajida and Benefit Point and WorkSmart, and August, a lot of the machine learning updates that have been coming out with Risk Match. But again, just being able to shine a light on everything that's going on is amazing. So thank you guys. And Ralph, you're awesome, man. I'm so glad I got to spend some time with you, and I hope this isn't the last time.
It won't be. I think if we're going to do something here, Sid, we should be doing this once a year, and we should have something that we can bring to the table next year or 6 months from now, whatever that might be. And I know next week we're going to have a workshop together. That will be a really good follow-up on this conversation, in my opinion.
Yeah, like August mentioned, we're teams here today from Amazon. There's actually more next week, so it goes back to that partnership, right? We've really created a really meaningful partnership, and I'm beyond excited about the opportunity it's going to create, for this industry, to be honest. And that's really what it boils down to. So thank you, Sid.
Yeah. Well, you heard it first. We've already got 2 more podcasts in the quiver here. Chad coming on the data science side, and Ralph is coming back next year. So if you haven't hit subscribe yet on the YouTube channel, all of our podcasts are filmed, which means you can see our beautiful faces, not just be serenaded by our voices. Hit subscribe on Channel Orange. And of course, we stream all of the podcasts on your favorite platform, whether that's Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, whatever your cup of tea is. I'm not judging here. So make sure that you hit subscribe, and new episodes will be delivered to you first. We'll see you on the next one.